Chapter 6. How Robin Hood Met with Scarlet. The youngster was clothed in scarlet, red, and sky-hid fire and gay, and he did frisk it over the plain and chanted a roundelay. One fine morning, soon after the proud sheriff had been brought to grief, Robin Hood and Little John went strolling down a path through the wood. It was not far from the foot bridge where they had fought their memorable battle, and that common impulse that directed their steps to the brook to quench their thirst and rest them in the cool bushes. The morning gave promise of a hot day. The road even by the brook was dusty, so the cooling stream was very pleasing and grateful to their senses. On each side of them beyond the dusty highway stretched out broad fields of tender young corn. On the yon side of the fields uprose the sturdy oaks and sooty oaks and bees, and ashes of the forest. While at their feet modest violets peeped out shyly and greeted the motorers with an odor which made the heart glad. Over on the far side of the brook in a tiny bay free in lily pads, lined from amid some clover blossoms on the bank, industrious bee rose with a hum of busy contentment. It was a day so brimful of quiet joy that the two friends lay flat on their backs gazing out at the scurrying clouds, and neither caring to break the silence. Presently they heard someone coming up the road whistling gaily, as though he owned the whole world and 'twas but made to whistle in. And on he chanted a roundelay with a merry note. "By my troth, a gay bird," quoth Robin, raising up on his elbow. "Let us lie still, and trust that his purse is not as light as his heart." So they lay still, and in a minute more up came a smart stranger dressed in scarlet and silk and wearing a jaunty hat with a curling cock feather in it. His whole costume was of scarlet, from the feather to the silk hosen on his legs. A goodly sword hung at his side, its scabbard all embossed with tilting knights and weeping ladies. His hair was long and yellow and hung clustering about his shoulders, for all the world like a singer, and may pour himself with his mincement gait as the pertest of them. Little John looked at his teeth jolly at the sight. "By my troth, a gay bird," he said, echoing the other's words, "but not so bad a bill for all his prettiness. Look you, those calves and thighs are well rounded and straight. The arms, for all that gold-wrought cloak, hang stoutly from full shoulders. I warrant you the Ethiopian can use his dainty sword grab well on occasion." "Nay," retorted Robin, "he is not but a lady's man from court. My longbow tends to plug chivalry that he would run and bellow lustily at sight of a porter's staff. Stay behind this bush, and I will soon get some rare sport out of him. Like his silk purse may contain more pennies than the law allows to one man in Sherwood or Barnestow." So saying, Robin would step forth briskly from the covert and planted himself in the way of the scarlet stranger. The latter had walked so slowly that he was scarce come to their resting place. And now on beholding Robin he neither slackened nor quickened his pace, but sauntered idly straight ahead, looking to the right and to the left with the friendliest air known in Warard. Quoth the outlaw, "Let me by running thus over a wayfarer roughshod. Wherefore should I hold, good fellow?" said the stranger in a smooth voice, and looking at Robin for the first time. "Because I bid you to," replied Robin. "And who may you be?" "Ask the other as coolly as you please, but my name matters not," said Robin. "But know that I am a public tax-gatherer and equalizer of shillings. If your purse have more than a just number of shillings or pence, I am esteemed somewhat, yet somewhat, for there are many worthy people round about these borders who have less than the just amount. Wherefore, sweet gentlemen, I pray you hand over your purse without more ado, that I may judge of his weight in proper fashion." The other smiled as sweetly as though a lady were paying him a compliment. "You are a droll fellow," he said calmly. "Your speech amuses me mightily. Pray continue, if you have not done, for I am in no hurry this morning." "I have said I am with my tongue that is needful," retorted Robin, beginning to grow ringed under the collar. "Nathless, I have other arguments which may not be so pleasing to your dainty skin. Preachy, stand and deliver. I promise to deal fairly with the purse." "Aye, good day," said the stranger with a little shrug of his shoulders. "I am deeply sorrowful that I cannot show my purse to every rough lot that asks to see it. But I really could not, as I have further need of it myself, in every farthing it contains. Wherefore, pray stand aside." "Nay, that will I not, and will go the harder with you if you do not yield at once." "Good fellow," said the other gently, "have I not heard all your speech with patience? And now that is all I promised to do. My conscience is salved, and I must go on my way. To roll low." He rolled, making as though to depart. "Hold, I say," quoth Robin hotly, for he knew how Little John must be chuckling at this from behind the bushes. "Hold, I say, else I shall have to bloody those fair locks of yours." And he swung his water-staff threateningly. "Alas," moaned the stranger, shaking his head, "the pity of it all. Now I shall have to rend this fellow through with my sword, and I look to be a peaceable man henceforth." Sighing deeply, he drew his shining blade and stood on guard. "Put by your weapon," said Robin. "It is too pretty a piece of steel to get cracked with common oak cudgel. And that is what would happen on the first pass I made at you. Get you a stick like mine out of yon undergrowth, and we will fight fairly, man to man." The stranger thought a moment with his usual slowness, and eyed Robin from head to foot, and then he unbuckled his scabbard, laid it and the sword aside, and walked deliberately over to the oak thicket. Choosing from among the shoots and saplings, he found a stout little tree to his liking, when he laid hold of it without stopping to cut it, and gave a tug. Up it came root and all, as though it were a stalk of corn, and the stranger walked back trimming it as quietly as though pulling up trees were the easiest thing in the world. Little John from his hiding place saw the feat, and could hardly restrain a long whistle. "By Our Lady," he muttered to himself, "I would not be a master. Robin's boots." Whatever Robin thought upon seeing the stranger's strength, he uttered not a word and budged not an inch. He only put his oak staff a parry as the other took his stand. There was a threefold surprise that day. By the brookside, the stranger and Robin and Little John in the bushes all found a combat that upset all reckoning. The stranger, for all his easy strength and cool nerve, found an antagonist, who met his blows with the skill of a woodman. Robin found the stranger as hard to hit as though fenced in by an oak hedge, but while Little John rolled over and over in silent joy, back and forth swayed the fighters, their cudgels pounding this way, and not knocking off splinters and bark, and threatening direst damage to bone and muscle and skin. Back and forth they pranced, kicking up a cloud of dust and gasping for fresh air. From a little way off you would have vowed that these two men were trying to put out a fire, so thickly hung the cloud of battle over them. Thrice did Robin smite the Scarlet Man, with such blows that a less stout fellow must have bowled over. Only twice did the Scarlet Man smite Robin, but the second blow was like to finish him. The first had been delivered over the knuckles, and though one was a glancing stroke, it well nigh broke Robin's fingers, so that he could not easily raise his staff again. And while he was dancing about in pain, and muttering in dust, Laverdos Leather's staff came swinging through the cloud up one side deep, and struck him under the arm. Down went Robin as though he were a ninepin, flat down into the dust of the road. But despite the pain, he was bounding up again, like any rubber man to renew the attack, when Little John interfered. "Hold," said he, bursting out of the bushes and seizing the stranger's weapon. "Hold, I say." "Nay," retorted the stranger quietly. "I was not offering to smite him while he was down. But if there be a whole nest of you hatching here by the waterside, Pluck out the other chicks and I'll make shift to fight them all. Not for all the deer in Sherwood, cried Robin. You are a good fellow and a gentleman. I'll fight no more with you, for verily I feel sore in wrist and body. Nor shall any of mine molest you henceforth. Sooth to say, Robin did not look in good fighting trim. His clothes were coated with dirt. One of his hosen had slipped halfway down from his knee. The sleeve of his jerkin was split, and his frieze was streaked with sweat and dirt. Little John eyed him drolly. How now, good master, quoth he. The sport you were to kick up has left you in sorry plight. Let me dust your coat for you. Marry, it has been dusted enough already, replied Robin. Well, and I believe the scriptures saying that all manner but dust. For he has sifted me through, and lying like gullet an inch deep, by your cleave. A sign he went to the brookside and drank deep and laved his face and hands. All this while the stranger had been eyeing Robin attentively, listening to his voice as though striving to recall it. If I mistake not, he said slowly at last, you are that famous outlaw, Robin Hood of Arnisdale. You say right, replied Robin. But my fame has been tumbling sadly about in the dust today. Now why did I not know you at once? Continued the stranger. This battle need not have happened, for I came abroad to find you today, and thought to have remembered your face and speech. Know ye not me, Rob, my lad? Hast ever been to Devil Lodge? I will gamble. My dear old chum, Will Gilwell, shouted Robin, throwing his arms about the other in sheer affection. What an ass. I was not to recognize you, but it has been years since we parted, and your gentle schooling has polished you off mightily. Will embrace his cousin no less heartily. We are quits on not knowing kinsmen, he said, for you have changed and strengthened much from the stripling with whom I used to run for races in old Sherwood. Oh, why seek you me? Asked Robin. You know I am an outlaw and dangerous company. And how left you mine uncle? Then have you heard aught of late off? Of Maid Maring? Well, last question first, answered Will, laughing, for I perceive that it lies nearest your heart. I saw Maid Maring not many weeks after the great shooting at Nottingham, when you won her the golden arrow. She prizes the bauble among her dearest possessions, though it has made her an enemy and a sheriff's proud daughter. Maid Maring bade me tell you, if I ever saw you, that she must return to Queen Eleanor's court, but she could never forget the happy days in the greenwood. As for the old squire, he is still hale and hearty, though rheumatic withal. He speaks of you as a sad young dog, but for all that is secretly proud of your skill at the bow, and of the way you are pestering the sheriff, whom he likes not. It was for my father's sake that I am now in the open, an outlaw like yourself. He has had a steward, a surly fellow enough, who, while I was away at school, but liked his way to favor until he lorded it over the whole house. Then he grew right saucy and impudent, but I father minded it not, deeming the fellow indispensable in managing the estate. But when I came back, it irked me sorely to see the fellow strut about as though he owned the place. He was sly enough with me at first, and would browbeat the squire only while I was out of earshot. Then it's one day, larder, that I heard loud voices through an open window, and paused to hearken. The vile servant called my father, you old fool, maimjolning middle earth. Metal art thou thyself, varlet. I shouted, springing through the window. Back for the impudence. Man, in my heat I smote him up doing might than I intended it by an minute. The fellow rolled over and never breathed afterwards. I think I broke his neck or something alike. And I knew that the sheriff would use this as a pretext to hound my father, if I tarried. So I bade the squire farewell and told him I would seek you in Sherwood. Now by my halidom, said Robin Hood, for a man escaping the law. You took it about as coolly as one could wish. To see you come tripping along decked out in all your gay plumage and trolling forth a roundy leg, One would think you had not a care in all the world. Indeed, I remarked to Little John here, but I hoped your purse was not as light as your heart. Belike you meant it, laughed Will. And is this Little John the Great? Shake hands with me. And he will, and promise me to cross a staff with me in front of me but some day in the forest. That will I, quoth the Little John heartily. Here's my hand on it. What is your last name again? Say you? Is to be changed, interposed Robin. Then shall the men armed with warrants go hang for all of us. Let me bid hink myself, all right. And Scarlet he came to us, and that shall be his name henceforth. Welcome to the greenwood, Will Scarlet. I welcome, well, Scarlet, said Little John. And they all clasped hands again and swore to be trees to the other and to Robin Hood's men in Sherwood Forest. Chapter 7. How Robin Hood met Friar Tuck. The friar took Robin Hood on his back. Deep water he did bestride, and spake neither good word nor bad, till he came at the other side. In summertime when leaves grow green, and flowers were fresh and gay, Robin Hood and his merry men were all disposed to play. Thus runs a quaint old ballad which begins the next adventure. Then some would leap, and some would run, and some try archery, and some ply the quarterstaff, and some fall to with the good broadsword. Some again would try around at buffet and fisticuff, and thus by every variety of sport and exercise, it perfected themselves in skill and made a band, and its prowess well known throughout all England. It had been a custom of Robin Hood and had met the best men in all the countryside. Whenever he heard of one more than usually skilled in any feat of arms, he would seek the man and test him in personal encounter, which did not always end happily for Robin. Then when he had found a man to his liking, he offered him service with the bold fellows of Sherwood Forest. Thus it came about that one day after a practice at shooting, in which Little John struck down the hart at 500 feet distance, Robin Hood was fain to boast. God's blessing on your heart, he cried, clapping the burly fellow on the shoulder. I would travel 100 miles to find one who could match you. At this Will Scarlet laughed full roundly. Their lives at Kyle Friar and Frantain's Abbey Tack. By name, what can beat both him and you? He said. Robin pricked up his ears at this free speech. Our Lady, he said, I'll neither eat nor drink till I see this same friar. And with his usual impetuosity, he at once set about arming himself for the adventure. On his head he placed a cap of steel. Underneath his Lincoln green he wore a coat of chain metal. Then with sword and bucklet bartered at his side he made a goodly show. But he also took with him his stout yew bow, and a sheaf of chosen arrows. So set forth upon his way with blithe heart, for it was a day when the whole face of the earth seemed glad, rejoicing in pulsing life. Steadily he pressed forward by winding ways, till he came to a green broad pasture land at whose edge flowed a stream dipping in and out among the willows and rushes on the banks. A pleasant stream it was, but it flowed calmly as though of some depth in the middle. Robin did not fancy getting his feet wet, or his fine suit of mail rusted, so he paused on the hither bank to rest and take his bearings. As he sat down quietly under the shade of a drooping willow, he heard snatches of a jovial song floating to him from the farther side. Then came a sound of two men's voices arguing. One was upholding the merits of hasty pudding, and the other stood out stoutly for meat pie, especially, quoth this one, when flavored with young onions, for mercy. Muttered Robin to himself, that is a tantalizing speech to a hungry man. That's bodikins. Dead air. Two men talk more alike than those two fellows yonder. In truth, Robin could well marvel at the speech, for the voices were curiously alike. Presently the willows parted on the other bank, and Robin could hardly forbear laughing outright. His mystery was explained. It was not two men who had done all the singing and talking, but one a stout, cool friar who wore a long cloak over his portly frame, tied with a cord in the middle. On his head was a knight's helmet, and in his hand was a no more like weapon than a huge pasty pie, with which he sat down by the water's edge. His twofold argument was finished. The meat pie had triumphed, and no wonder, for it was the present weakness, soon to give its own testimony. But first the friar took off his helmet to cool his head, and a droll picture he made. His head was as round as an apple, and eke as smooth in spots. A fringe of close curling black hair grew round the base of his skull, but his crown was bare and shiny as an egg. His cheeks also were smooth and red and shiny, and his little gray eyes danced about with the funniest air imaginable. You would have blamed Robin Hood for wanting to laugh, but you heard this serious, truth-fed talk, and then seeing this jovial, one-fed man, good humor and fat living stood there all over him. Yet for all that he looked stout enough and able to take care of himself with any man. His short neck was thick like that of a Berkshire bull. His shoulders were set far back, and his arms spread therefrom like two oak limbs. As he sat him down, the cloak fell apart, disclosing a sword and buckler as stout as Robin's own. Athletes. Robin was not dismayed at sight of the weapons. Instead, his heart fell within him when he saw the meat pie, which was now in fair way to be devoured before his very eyes. For the friar lost no time in thrusting one hand deep into the pie, while he crossed himself with the other. Thereupon Robin seized his bow and fitted a shaft. "Hey, friar," he sang out, "carry me over the water, or else I cannot answer for your safety." The other started at the unexpected greeting, and laid his hand upon his sword. Then he looked up and beheld Robin's arrow pointing full upon him. "Put down your bow, fellow," he shouted back, "and I will bring you over the brook. It is our duty in life to help each other, and your keen shaft shows me that you are a man worthy of some attention." So the friar knight got him up gravely, though his eyes twinkled with a cunning light, and laid aside his beloved pie and his cloak and his sword and his buckler, and waded across the stream with waddling dignity. Then he took Robin Hood upon his back, and spoke neither good word nor bad, till he came to the other side. Lightly he took Robin off his back, and said, "I am much beholden to you, good father." "Nay, good father, but I shall get my feet wet," he commenced. "Are your feet any better than mine?" retorted the other. "I fear me now that I have already wetted myself so sadly as to lay in a sore of rheumatic pains by way of penance." "I am not so strong as you," continued Robin. "That helmet and sword and buckler would be my undoing on the uncertain footing I'm strain, to say nothing of your holding flesh and bones." "Then I will lighten you up somewhat," replied the other calmly. "Promise to carry me across, or and I will lay aside my war gear." "Agreed," said Robin. And the friar thereupon stripped himself, and Robin bent his stout back and took him up even as he had promised. Now the stones at the bottom of the stream were round and slippery, and the current swept along strongly, waist deep in the middle. Moreover, Robin had a heavier load than the other had borne, nor did he know the ford. So he went stumbling along, now stepping into a deep hole, now stumbling over a boulder in a manner that threatened to unseat his rider or plunge them both clear under current. But the fat friar hung on and dug his heels into his steed's ribs in his gallant manner, as if he were riding in a tournament, while as for poor Robin, the sweat ran down him in torrents, and he gasped like the winded horse he was. But at last he managed to stagger out on the bank, and deposit his unwieldy load. No sooner had he set the friar down than he seized his own sword. "Now, holy friar," quoth he, panting and wiping the sweat from his brow, "what say the scriptures that you quote so gleefully? Be not weary of well-doing, You must carry me back again, or I swear that I will make a cheese off out of your jacket." The friar's grey eyes once more twinkled with a cunning gleam that boded no good to Robin, but his voice was as calm and courteous as ever. "Your wits are keen, my son," he said, "and I see that the waters of the stream have not marred your spirit. Once more will I bend my back to the oppressor and carry the weight of the haughty." So Robin mounted again in high glee, then carried his sword in his hand, and went prepared to tarry upon the other side. But while he was bethinking himself what great words to use, when he should arrive later, he felt himself slipping from the friar's broad back. He clutched frantically to save himself, but had too round a surface to grasp, besides being hampered by his weapon. So down went he with a loud splash into the middle of the stream, where the crafty friar had conveyed him. "There," quoth the holy man, choose you, my fine fellow, whether you will sink or swim," and had gained his own bank without more ado, while Robin thrashed and spluttered about until he made shift to grasp a willow wand and thus haul himself ashore on the other side. Then Robin's rage waxed furious despite his wetting, and he took his bow and his arrows, and had flying one shaft after another at the worthy friar, that they rattled harmlessly off his steel buckler, while he laughed and minded them no more than if they had been hailstones. Shoot on, good fellow," he sang. "I'll let me shoot as you're begun. If you shoot here a summer's day, your mark, it will not shun." So Robin shot, and passing well, till all his arrows were gone, when from further rage he began to revile him. "You bloody villain," showered he, "You're some singing hypocrite, do revoker of good hasty pudding. Come but within reach of my sword arm, and friar or no friar, I'll save your tonsure closer than ever bald-paid monk was shaven before. Soft you and fair," said the friar, undying mournfully. "Hard words are cheap, and you may make your whim presently. And you would like to bout with swords, meet me halfway out of the stream." And with this speech the friar waded into the brook, sword in hand, was met halfway by the impetuous outlaw. Thereupon began a fierce and mighty battle. Up and down, in and out, back and forth they fought. The swords flashed in the rays of the declining sun, and then met with a clash that would have shivered less sturdy weapons or disarmed less sturdy wielders. Many a smart blow was landed, but each perceived that the other wore an undercoat of linked mail, which might not be pierced. Nevertheless, their ribs ached at the force of the blows. Once and again they paused by mutual consent and caught breath, and looked hard each at the other, for never had either met so stout a fellow. Finally, in a furious onset of lunge, Imperial Robin's foot stepped on a rolling stone, and he went down upon his knees. But his antagonist would not take this advantage. He paused until Robin should get upon his feet. "Now by Our Lady," cried the outlaw, using his favorite oath, "you are the fairest swordsman that I have met in many a long day. I would beg a boon of you." "What is it?" said the other. "Give me leave to set my horn to my mouth, and blow 3 blasts thereon." "That will I do," said the neutral friar. "Blow till your breath fails, and it please you." Then says the old ballad, who had set his horn to mouth and blew mighty blasts, "Man 100 you putmen, bows bent, came reeking over the lee. Whose men are these?" said the friar, "that come so hastily?" "These men are mine," said Robin Hood, feeling that his time to laugh was come at last. Then said the friar in his turn, a boon the like I gave to you. Give me leave to set my fist to my mouth and whistle 3 blasts thereon." "That will I do," said Robin, "or else I were lacking in courtesy." The friar set his fist to his mouth and put the horn to shame by the piercing whistles he blew, whereupon 100 great dogs came running and jumping so swiftly that they had reached their bank as soon as Robin Hood's men had reached his side. Then followed a rare foolish conflict. Stoutly, Much, Little John and the other outlaws began sending their arrows whizzing toward the opposite bank. But the dogs which were taught of the friar dodged the missiles cleverly and ran and fetched them back again, just as the dogs of today catch sticks. "I have never seen the like of this in my days," cried Little John amazed. "'Tis rank sorcery and witchcraft. Take off your dogs, Friar Tuck," shouted Will Scarlet, who had but then ran up, and who now stood laughing heartily at the scene. "Friar Tuck," exclaimed Robin, astounded. "Are you Friar Tuck? Then am I your friend, for you are he I came to seek." "I am but a poor apple friar," said the other, whistling to his pack. "I name Friar Tuck of Fountain'sdale. For 7 years have I tended the abbey here, preached o'er Sundays, and married and christened and buried folk, and fought truth need were and nimwer. And if it smakes not too much of boasting, I not met the knight the met or the young beautiful, but yours is a stout blade. I would fain know you. 'Tis Robin Hood, the outlaw who has been assisting you at this christening," said Will Scarlet, glancing roguishly at the two opponents' dripping garments. And at this sally, the whole band burst into a shout of laughter, in which Robin and Friar Tuck joined. "Robin Hood," cried the good friar presently, holding his sides, "I feel indeed that famous human. Then I like you well, and had I known you earlier, would have both carried you across and shared my passy pie with you." "To speak smoothly," replied Robin gaily, "it was that same pie that led me to be rude. Now, therefore, bring it and your dogs and repair with us to the greenwood. We have need of you. With this message came I today to seek you. We will build you a hermitage in Sherwood Forest, and you shall keep us from evil ways. Will you not join our band?" "Marry, that will I," cried Friar Tuck jovially. "Once more will I cross this much beforded stream, and go with you to the good greenwood." Chapter 8. How Allen at Dallin was willing was prospered. What is thy name? Then said Robin Hood, "Come tell me without any fail." "By the faith o' my body." Then said the young man, "My name it is Allen a Dale." Friar Tuck and Much the miller's son soon became right good friends over the steaming stew. They journeyed prepared for the merry men that evening. Tuck was mightily pleased when he found a man in the forest who could make pasties, and who had cooked for no less person than the High Sheriff himself. While Much marveled at the friar's knowledge of herbs and simples and woodland things, would savor the stew greatly. So they gabbled together like two old gossips, who between them made such a tasty mess that Robin Hood and his stout followers were like never to leave off eating. And the friar said grace too with great gratitude over the food, and Robin said amen, and that henceforth they were always to have mass of Sundays. So Robin walked forth into the wood that evening with his stomach full and his heart therefore in great contentment and love for other men. He did not stop the first passer-by, as his manner often was, and desire a fight. Instead, he stepped behind a tree when he heard a man's voice and sung, and waited to behold the singer. Perhaps he remembered, also, the merry chanting of Will Scarlet, and how he had tried to give it pause a few days before. Equal. This fellow was clad in scarlet, though he did not look quite as fine a gentleman. Nafras, he was a sturdy yeoman of honest face and a voice far sweeter than Will's. He seemed to be a strolling minstrel, for he bore a harp in his hand which he frowned, while his lusty tenor voice rang out with, "Hey down, and a down, and a down, and a down." The lassie back eyeing at the town day. "Come night, come dark or light, she will lead me back at the town." Robin let the singer pass, warreling on his way. "It's not in me to disturb a light-hearted lover," This night, he muttered, a memory of Maureen coming back to him. Pray heaven she may be true to him, and the wedding be a gay one. Back on the town. So Robin went back to his camp, where I told of the minstrel. If any of you set on him after this, quoth he in ending, bring him to me, for I would have speech with him. The very next day his wish was gratified. Little John and Much the miller's son were out together on a foraging expedition, when they espied the same young man. At least, they thought it must be, but now he came trooping along the way. His scarlet was all in tatters, and at every step he fetched a sigh, a walk, and a well a day. Then stepped forth Little John and Much the miller's son. Oh, do not wet the earth with your weeping, said Little John. Else we shall all have lumbago. No sooner did the young man catch sight of them than he bent his bow, and held an arrow back to his ear. Stand off, he said. What is your rule with me? Put by your weapon, said Much. We will not harm you. But you must come before a master straight under yon greenwood tree. So the minstrel put by his bow and suffered himself to be led before Robin Hood. How now, quoth Robin, when he beheld his sorry countenance, or knew not he whom her longer ago ye estimate, borrowing so blithely about alla lassie Becca, the town. The same in body, good sir, replied the other sadly. Yet my spirit is grievously changed. Tell me your tale, said Robin courteously. Belike I can help you. Looking no man on earth, I fear, said the stranger in Everest. I'll tell you the tale. Yesterday I stood pledged to a maid, and thought soon to wed her. But she has been taken from me, and is to become an old knight's bride this very day. And as for me, I care not what ending comes to my days, or how soon will I marry. Come up, said Robin. How about the old knight so sudden vantage? Work your worship. 'Tis this way, and ornaments overrun us, and are in such great favor that men may say them may. This old returned crusader coveted the land whereon my lady dwells. The estate is not large, but all on her own right. Whereupon her brother says she shall wed a title, and he and the old knight have fixed it up for today. Why, but surely, began Robin. Hear me out, worship, said the other. Like you think me a sorry dog knight to make fight of this, but the old knight, look you, is nigh nominable. I threw one of his varlets into a thorn hedge, and another into a water butt, and a third landed headfirst into a ditch. But I couldn't do any fighting at all. 'Tis a pity, quoth Little John gravely. He had been sitting, brass like listening to this tale of woe. I think you friar Tot. Doth not a bit of fighting ease a man's mind? Bloodletting is oft times recommended of the leeches, replied Tyke. Does the maid love you? Asked Robin Hood. By our troth, she loved me right well, said the minstrel. I have a little ring of hers by me which I've kept for 7 long years. What is your name? Said Robin Hood. By the faith of my body, replied the young man. My name is Alan Adil. What will you give me, Alan Adil? Said Robin Hood. In ready gold or fee, to help you to your true love again, and deliver her back into you. I have no money, save only 5 shillings, quoth Alan. Boot. Carry on our boot. Are you not Robin Hood? Robin nodded. Then you, cunningly? Said Alan Adel eagerly. And if you give me back my love, I swear upon the book that I will be true servant forever after. Where's this wedding to take place, and when? Asked Robin. The Plenting Church, scarce 5 miles from here, and at 3:00 the afternoon. Then to Plenton we will go, cried Robin suddenly, springing into action. And he gave out orders like a general, do you? Steadily. Do you have 420 good men over against Plimpton Church G-manst 3-0 the afternoon? Mitch, good fellow. Do you cook up some porridge for this youth? For he must have a good round stout Mitch here. Hey, in the better gear. Will Scarlet. You will see to decking him out bravely for the nonce. And for our tech, hold yourself in readiness, good book in hand at the church. Mayhap you had best go ahead of us all. The fat Bishop of Hereford was full of pomp and importance that day at Plimpton Church. He was to celebrate the marriage of an old merit, a returned Rusetter, and a landed young woman. All the gentry thereabout would have graced the occasion with their presence. The church itself was gaily festooned with flowers for the ceremony, while out in the terrace, white at one side brown ale flowed freely for all the servitors. Already were the guests beginning to assemble. The bishop, back in the vestry, saw a minstrel clad in green walk out boldly to the door and peer within. It was Rodden Hullett, who had borrowed a talent's beerbund harp for the time. Now, who are you, fellow? Quoth the bishop. And what do you here at the mess you do with you harp and saucy air? May it please your reverence, returned Robin, bowing very humbly. I am but a strolling harper, yet likened the best in the whole north country. And I'd hoped that my firming might add zest to the wedding today. What tune can you harp? Demanded the bishop. I can harp a tune so merry that a forlorn lover will forget he's jilted, said Robin. I can harp another tune that will make a bride forsake a lord at the altar. I can harp another tune that will bring loving souls together. Though they were uphill and down dale 5 good miles away from each other. Then welcome, good minstrel, said the bishop. Music pleases me right well, and if it can play up to your prattle, 'tway indeed grace your ceremony. Let us have a sample of your wares. Nay, I must not put finger to string until the bride and groom have come. Such a thing would ill fortune both us and them. Have it as you will, said the bishop. But here comes the party now. Then up the lane to the church came the old knight, preceded by 10 archers liveried in scarlet and gold. A brave sight the archers made, but their master walked slowly leaning upon a king, and shaking as though in a palsy. And after them, then a sweet lass leaning upon her brother's arm. Her hair did shine like glistering gold, and her eyes were like blue violets that peep out shyly at the sun. The color came among her cheeks like the ting-ting of a seashell, and her face was flushed as though she had been weeping. And now she walked with a proud air, as though she defied the world to crush her spirit. She had but 2 maids with her, Femitin lassies, with black eyes and broad bosoms, who set off their lady's more delicate beauty while one held up the bride's gown from the ground, the other carried flowers in plenty. Now by are the wedding bells that ever were rung, quoth Robin boldly. This is the worst matched pair that ever mine has beheld. Silence, miscreant, said a man who stood near. The bishop had hurriedly donned his gown, and now stood ready to meet the couple at the windmill. But Robin paid no heed to him. He let the knight and his 10 archers pass by, and he strode up to the bride, and placed himself on the other side from her brother. Courage, lady, he whispered. There's another minstrel near, who mayhap may play more to your liking. The lady glanced at him with a frightened air, but read such honesty and kindness in his glance that she brightened, and gave him a grateful look. Stand aside, fool, cried the brother wrathfully. Nay, but I am to bring good fortune to the bride by accompanying her through the mirror to door, said Robin, laughing. Thereupon he was allowed to walk by her side unmolested, up to the man now with the party. Now strike up your music, fellow, ordered the bishop. Right gladly will I, quoth Robin, and you will let me choose my instrument. For sometimes I like the harp, and other times I think the horn makes the merriest music in all the world. And he drew forth his bugle from underneath his green cloak and blew 3 winding notes, made den offering out das ringinets. Seize him, yelled the bishop, there's mischief afoot. Are the tricks of Robin Hood. The 10 liveried archers rushed forward from the rear of the church, where they had been stationed. But their rush was blocked by the onlookers who now rose from their pews. In alarm, they crowded the aisles. Meanwhile, Robin had leapt lightly over the lion meal rail and stationed himself in and up by the altar. Stand where you are, he shouted, drawing his bow. The first man to pass the rail dies the death. And all ye who have come to witness a wedding, stay in your seats. We shall wound them, since we are come into the church, that the bride shall choose her own sway. Then uprose another great commotion at the door, for 20 good bowmen came marching in with Will Stew at their head, and they seized the 10 liveried archers, and the bride's scowling brother and the other men in guard, and bound them prisoners. Then in came Alinada, decked out gaily, with Will Scarlet for best man. They walked gravely down the aisle and stood over against Anna. Ha ha ha, before a maiden white shunitushes. And the laws of good King Harry be just ones, said Robin. Now, maiden, for this wedding continues, who will you have to husband? The maiden answered not in words, but smiled with a glad delight in her eyes, and walked over to Alan and clasped her arms about his neck. That is her true love, said Robin. Young Alan instead of the gouty knight. And the true lover shall be married at this time, before we depart away. Now, my lord bishop, proceed with the ceremony. Nay, it shall not be, protested the bishop. Rebimes must be cried 3 times in the church. Such is the law of our land. Come here, Little John, called Robin impatiently, and plucked off the bishop's frock from his back and put it on the yeoman. Now the bishop was short and fat, and Little John was long and lean. The gown hung loosely over Little John's shoulders and came only to his waist. It was a fine comical sight, and the people began to laugh. Consummate Adam, by the faith, O my body, said Robin. This cloth makes you a man, the finest bishop that ever I saw in my life. Now cried the bands. So Little John clambered awkwardly into the choir, his short gown fluttering gaily, and he called the bands for the marriage he'd been made. I'm Alan a doe once, twice, and thrice. That's not enough, said Robin. Your gown is so short that you must talk longer. Then Little John asked him in the church 4, 5, 6, and 7 times. Good enough, said Robin. Now, boy, I see a worthy friar in the back of this church who can say a better service than ever my Lord Bishop of Hereford. My Lord Bishop shall be witness and seal the papers. But do you, good friar, bless this pen with a book and candle. So Furtak, who all along had been back in one corner of the church, came forward Anam and Alam, and his maid kneeled before him, while the old knight held him unwind and witness, nasties his teeth and he thumbed. When he asked who giveth this woman, Robin stepped up and answered in a clear voice, Do. I, Robin Hood of Barnesdale and Sherwood, and he who takes her from Pawnadale shall buy her full dearly. So the twain were declared man and wife and duly blessed, and the bride was kissed by each sturdy yeoman, beginning with Robin Hood. Now I cannot end this jolly tale better than the words of the ballad which came out of the Hapner, and which has been sung in the villages and countryside ever since. And thus having end of this merry wedding, the bride looked like a queen. Chapter 9. How the widow's 3 sons were rescued. Now Robin Hood is to Nottingham gone, with a Lincoln down and a down. And there met with the proud sheriff was walking along the town. The wedding party was a merry one that left Plimpton Church. I ween, but not so merry were the ones left behind. My Lord Bishop of Hereford was stuck up in his corgan loft and left, Gunless and fuming. The 10 liveried archers were variously disposed about the church to keep him company, 2 of them being locked in a tiny crypt, 3 in the belfry to ring us a wedding peal, as Robin said, and the others in the choir seats are in the vestry. The bride's brother at her entreaty was released, but bidding not to return to the church that dared interfere with his sister again on pain of death. While the rusty old knight was forced to climb a high tree, where he sat, and Smirre perched among the branches, feebly cursing the parted. As it departed, 'twas then approaching sundown, but none of the retainers or villagers dared rescue the imprisoned ones that night, for fear of Robin Hood's men. So it was not until sunset the next day that they were released. The bishop and the old knight, stiff as they were, did not delay longer than for breakfast. For so great was their rage and shame. They made straight to Nottingham and levied the sheriff's forces. The sheriff himself was not anxious to try conclusions again with Robin in the open. Perhaps he had some slight scruples regarding his oath, but the others swore that they would go straight to the king if he did not help them, so he was fain to consent. The force of 100 picked men from the royal foresters and swordsmen of the Shire was gathered together and marched straight round to Greenwood. There, as fortune would have it, they surprised some score of outlaws hunting, and instantly gave chase. But they could not surround the outlaws, who kept well in the lead, ever a man dropping behind a log or boulder to speed back a shaft which meant mischief to the pursuers. One shaft indeed carried off the sheriff's hat, and caused that worthy man to fall forward upon his horse's neck from sheer terror, while 5 others landed in the fleshy parts of Forrester's arms. But the attacking party was not wholly unsuccessful. One outlaw in his flight stumbled and fell, while 2 others instantly stopped and helped to put him on his feet again. They were the widow's 3 sons, stout Will, Lester, and John. The pause was an unlucky one for them, as a party of sheriff's men got above them and cut them off from their fellows. Swordsmen came up in the rear, and they were soon hemmed in on every side. But they gave good account of themselves, and before they had been overborne by a force of numbers, they had killed 2 and disabled 3 more. The infuriated attackers were almost on the point of hewing the stout outlaws to pieces, when the sheriff had told, "Bind the villains. We will follow the law on this and take them to the town jail. But I promise ye, the biggest public hanging that has been seen in this shire for many changes of the moon." So they bound the widow's 3 sons and carried them back speedily to Nottingham. Now Robin Hood had not men to be near the scene of the fight, or with his men would so for a time. He heard nothing of the happening. But by evening, while returning to the camp, he was met by the widow herself, who came weeping along the way. "What news? What news?" "Good woman," said Robin hastily. "I usually lie." For he lied to her well. "God save ye, Master Robin," said the dame wildly. "God keep ye from the fate that has met my 3 sons. The sheriff has laid hands on them, and they are condemned to die. Now, by Our Lady, that cuts me to the heart. Stout Will and Lester, and Mary John, the earliest friends I had in the band, and still among the bravest. It must not be. When is this hanging set?" "Middle the tinker tells me that it is for tomorrow noon," replied the dame. "By the truth on my body," quoth Robin, "you could not tell me in better time. The memory of the old days, and ye freely bade me sup and dine, would spur me on, even if 3 of the bravest lads of all the shire were not imperiled. Trust me, good woman." The old widow threw herself on the ground and embraced his knees. "This dire danger I am asking you to face," she said, weeping, "and yet I knew your brave true heart would answer me. Heaven help ye, good Master Robin, to answer a poor widow's prayers." Then Robin Hood sped straightway to the forest camp, where he heard the details of the skirmish. How that his men had been outnumbered 5 to 1, but got off safely, as they thought, until it counted in endo such substance. You must rescue them, my men, quoth Robin, even from out the shadow of the rope itself. Whereupon the band set to work to devise ways and means. Robin walked apart a little way with his head leaned thoughtfully upon his breast, for he was sore troubled. When whom should he meet but an old begging palmer, one of a devout order which made pilgrimages and wandered from place to place, supported by children. This old fellow walked boldly up to Robin and asked alms of him. Since Robin had been wont to aid members of his order, what news, what news? Ah, foolish old man. Said Robin, what news, I do thee pray? Some of you squires in Nottingham town, quoth the palmer, were condemned to die. The lark that is greater news than the shires had in some Sundays. Then Robin's long-sought idea came to him like a flash. Come, change thine apparel with me, old man, he said. I'll give thee 40 shillings in good silver to spend in beer or wine. All thine apparel is good, the palmer protested, and mine is ragged and torn. The Holy Church teaches that thou shouldst never laugh an old man to scorn. I am in simple earnest, I say. Come, change thine apparel with mine. Here are 20 pieces of good broad gold to feast thy brethren right royally. So the palmer was persuaded, and Robin put on the old man's hat, which stood full high in the crown, and his cloak patched with black and blue and arrayed, like Joseph's coat of many colors in its old age, cobbled above and below, but so many covered so spilled as below stove. And while as he made the changing dress, he made so many whimsical comments also about a man's pride in the dress that makes a man, that the palmer was like choked with cackling laughter. I warrant you that you were cockle sights when they parted company that day. Nathless, Robin's own mother would not have known him, had she been living. The next month the whole town of Nottingham was Easter, and as soon as the gates were open, folk began to pour in, for tripum hanging was not held there every day in the week, and the bustle almost equated a fair day. Robin Hood in his palmer's disguise was one of the first ones to enter the gates, and he strolled up and down and around the town as though he had never been there before in all his life. Presently he came to the marketplace, and beheld thereon 3 gallows erected. Who are these builded for, my son? Asked he of a rough soldier standing by. For 3 of Robin Hood's men, answered the other. They were Robin himself. So I'll be thrice as high, I warrant ye. But Robin is too smart to get within the sheriff's clutches again. The palmer crossed himself. They say that he is a bold fellow, he went. Ha, said the soldier. You may be bold enough, I bind stumps, I. For us, but the open marketplace is another matter. Who is to hang these 3 poor wretches? Asked the palmer. That hath the sheriff not decided. But here he comes now to answer his own questions. And the soldier came to stiff attention as the sheriff and his bodyguard stalked pompously out to inspect the gallows. Oh, heaven save you, worshipful sheriff, said the palmer. Heaven protect you. What will you give a silly old man to die to be your hangman? Who are you, fellow? Asked the sheriff sharply. Not save a poor old palmer, but I can try their souls and hang their bodies most devoutly. Very good, replied the other. A fee today is 13 pence, and I will add therein some suits of clothing for that ragged back of yours. God bless ye, said the palmer. And he went with the soldier to the jail to prepare his 3 men for execution. Just before the stroke of noon, the doors of the prison opened, and the procession of the condemned came forth. Down through the long lines of packed people they walked to the marketplace, the palmer in the lead. And the widow's 3 sons marching firmly erect between soldiers. At the gallows foot they halted. The palmer whispered to them, as though offering last words of consolation. And the 3 men with arms bound tightly behind their backs ascended the scaffold, followed by their confessor. Then Robin stepped to the edge of the scaffold, while the people grew still as death. for they desired to hear the last words uttered to the victims. But Robin's voice did not quaver forth weakly, as formerly, and his figure had stiffened, bolt upright beneath the black robe that covered his rags. "Harsh, proud sheriff," he cried. "I was ne'er a hangman on all life, nor do I now intend to begin that trade. There's be he who first set the fashion of hanging. I have but 3 more words to say. Listen to them." And forth from the robe he drew his horn and blew 3 loud blasts thereon. Then his keen hunting knife flew forth, and in a trice stout wheel arrestor and Mary John were free men, and had gone forward and seized the halberds from the nearest soldiers guarding the gallows. "Seize them, it is Robin Hood," screamed the sheriff, "and 100 pounds if you hold them, dead or alive." "I make it 200, roared the fat bishop. But their voices were drowned in the uproar that ensued immediately after Robin blew his horn. He himself had drawn his sword and leapt down the stairs from the scaffold, followed by his 3 men. The guard had closed around them, in vain effort to disarm them, when a rescuer shouted astutely. His clear voice on one side of them and a rescue, bellowed Little John's on the other, ran down through a terrace door. Crowd rushed for men in Lincoln Green, their force seeming twice the number in the confusion. The swords drawn they fell upon the guard from every side at once. There was a brief clash of hot weapons, then the guard scattered wildly, and Robin Hood's men formed in a compact mass around their leader and forced their way slowly down the marketplace. "Seize them, in the king's name," shrieked the sheriff. "Close the gates." In truth, the peril would have been even greater had this last order been carried out, but was Scarlet, and Ida had foreseen that event, and had already overpowered the 2 orders. So the gates stood wide open, and toward them the band of outlaws headed. The soldiers rallied a force of twice their number and tried resolutely to pierce their center. But the retreating force turned thrice and sent such volleys of kink arrows from their good yew bows that they kept a distance between the 2 forces. And thus the gate was reached, and the long road leading up the hill, and at last the protecting Grindwood itself. The soldiers dared come no farther, and the widow's 3 sons, I warrant you, supped more heartily that night than ever before in their whole lives. Chapter 10. How a beggar filled the public eye. Rodin accosted him in his way, to see what he might be, if any beggar had money. He thought some part had he. One bright morning, soon after the stirring events told in the last chapter, Robin wandered forth alone down the road to Barnesdale, to see if aught had come of the sheriff's pursuit, but all was still unserene and peaceful. No one was in sight save a solitary beggar who came sturdily along his way in Robin's direction. The beggar caught sight of Robin at the same moment as he emerged from the trees, but gave no sign of having seen him. He neither slackened to quicken his pace, but jogged forward merrily, wishing as he came, and beating time by puncture holes in a dusty road with the stout pike-staff in his hand. The curious look of the fellow arrested Robin's attention, and he decided to stop and talk with him. The fellow was bar-legged and bare-armed, and wore a long shift of a shirt, fastened with a belt. About his neck hung a stout, bulging bag, which was buckled by a good piece of leather thong. He had 3 hats upon his head, together sticked fast. He cared neither for the wind nor wet. In man's woe ere he passed. The fellow looked so fat and hearty, and the wallet on his shoulder seemed so well filled, that Robin thought within himself, "This is a lucky beggar for me. If any of them have many, this is the chap, and Mary, he should share it with us poor bodies." So he flourished his own stick and planted himself in the traveler's path. "Sirrah," "Fellow," quoth he, "whither away so fast? Tarry, for we have speech with ye." The beggar made as though he heard him not, and kept straight on with his faring. "Tarry, I say, fellow," said Robin again, "for there's a way to make folks obey." Nay, 'tis not so," answered the beggar, speaking for the first time. "I obey no man in all England, not even the king himself. So let me pass on my way, for leg rowed, and I've still far to go before I can care for my stormines good." "Now, by my troth," said Robin, once more getting in front of the other, "I see well by your fat countenance that you lack not for good food while I go hungry. Therefore you must lend me of your means till we meet again, so that I may cheese at the nearest tavern." "I have no money to lend," said the beggar crossly. "Methinks you are as young a man as I, and as well able to earn a supper. So go your way, and I'll go mine. If you fast till you get out of me, you'll go hungry for the next 12 months. Now while I've a stout stick to whack your saucy bones," cried Robin. "Stand and deliver, I say, or I'll dust your shirt for you. And if that will not teach you manners, then we'll see what a broad arrow can do with a beggar's skin." The beggar smiled and answered boast with boast. "Come on with your staff, fellow. I care no more for it than for a pudding stick. And as for your pretty bow, that for it." And with amazing quickness, he swung his pike staff around and knocked Robin's bow clean out of his hand, so that his fingers smarted with pain. Robin danced and tried to bring his own staff into action, but the beggar never gave him a chance. Biff, whack, came the pike staff, smiting him soundly and beating down his guard. There were but two things to do. You either stand there and take a sound drubbing, or beat a hasty retreat. Robin chose the latter. As you are, I would probably have bowed, and scurried back into the wood, blowing his horn as he went. "Farce or shame, man," jeered the old beggar after him. "What is your haste? We had but just begun. Stay and take your money, else you will never be able to pay your reckoning at the tavern." But Robin answered him never a word. He fled up hill and down dale till he met 3 of his men, who were running up in answer to his summons. "What is wrong?" they asked. "'Tis a saucy beggar," said Robin, catching his breath. "He is back there on the high road with the hardest stick I've met in a good many days. He gave me no chance to reason with him. The dirty stamp, the man, and 2 of the widow's sons." Howdled scarce concealed their mirth at the thought of Robin, running from a beggar. Not this, they kept grave faces, and asked their leader if he was hurt. "Me," he replied, "but I shall speedily feel better. But you will fetch me the same beggar, and let me have a fair chance at him." So the 3 came and made haste, and came out upon the high road, and followed after the beggar, who was going smoothly along his way again, as though he were at peace with all the world. The easiest way to settle this beggar, said March, is to surprise him. Let us cut through yon neck of woods and come upon him before he is aware. The others agreed to this, and the 3 were soon close upon their prey. "Now," quoth Much, and the other 2 sprang quickly upon the beggar and spaffed and wrested his pecked staff from his hand. At the same moment Much drew his dagger and flashed it before the fellow's breast. "Yield you, my man," cried he, "for a friend of ours awaits you in the wood, to teach you how to fight properly. Give me a fair chance," said the beggar valiantly. "I'll fight you lived once," but they would not listen to him. Instead, turned about and began marching toward the forest. Seeing that it was useless to struggle, the beggar began to parley. "Good, my masters," quoth he, "why use this violence? I will go with you safe and quietly, if you insist. but if you will set me free, I'll make it worth your while. I've £100 in my bag here. Let me go my way. Ye shall have all that's in the bag." The three outlaws took counsel together at this. "What say you?" asked much of the others. "My master would be more glad to see this beggar's wallet than his sorry face." The other two agreed, and the little party came to a halt and loosed hold of the beggar. "Count out your gold speedily, friend," said Much. There was a brisk wind blowing, and the beggar turned about to face it. Directly they had enchanted him. "It shall be done, gossips," said he. "One of you lend me your cloak and we will spread it upon the ground and put the wealth upon it." The cloak was handed him, and he placed his wallet upon it, as though it were very heavy indeed. Then he crouched down and fumbled with the leather fastenings. The outlaws also bent over and watched the proceeding closely, lest he should hide some of the money on his person. Presently he got the bag unfastened and plunged his hands into it. Forth from it he drew, not shining gold, but handfuls of fine meal which he dashed into the eager faces of the men around him. The wind aided him in this, and soon there arose a blinding cloud which filled the eyes, noses, and mouths of the three outlaws so they could scarcely see or breathe, while they gasped and choked and sputtered and faltered bound wildly for that rogue or beggar. He finished the job by taking up the cloak by its corners and shaking it vigorously in the faces of his suffering victims. Then he seized his stick which lay conveniently near, and began to rain blows down upon their heads, shoulders, or sides, all the time dancing first on one leg, then on the other, and laying, "Villains, rascals, here are the £100 I promised. How do you like them? Aye, faith, you'll get all that's in the bag." Whack, 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 whack. The stick emphasizing each word. Howls of pain might have gone up from the sufferers, but they had too much meal in their throats for that. There went thoughts to flee, and they stumbled off blindly down the road, the beggar following them away to give them a few parting love taps. "Fare you well, my masters," he said finally, turning the other way. "When next I come along the Barnsdale Road, I hope you will be able to tell gold from meal dust." With this he departed, an easy victor, and again went whistling on his way, while the three outlaws rubbed the meal out of their eyes and began to catch their breath again. As soon as they could look around them clearly, they beheld Robin Hood leaning against a tree trunk and surveying them smilingly. He had recovered his own spirits in full measure on seeing their plight. "God save you, gossips," he said. "You must, in sooth, have gone the wrong way and been to the mill, for the looks of your clothes." Then when they looked shooing fa, and answered never a word, he went on. "You soft, wounded. Did you see out of that old beggar?" "I might me." "In sooth, master," responded Much the miller's son, "we heard more of him than we saw him. He filled us so full of meal that I shall sweat meal for a week. I was born in a mill, and had the smell of meal in my nostrils from my very birth, you might say, and yet never before did I see such a quantity of the stuff in sin space." And he sneezed violently. "How was that?" asked Robin demurely. "Why, we laid hold of the beggar, as you did order, when he offered to pay for his release out of the bag he carried upon his back." "The same I coveted," quoth Robin as if to himself. "So we agreed to this," went on Much, and spread a cloak down, and he opened his bag and shook it thereon. Instantly a great cloud of mails were in the air, and not before he left certain black and blue spots to be remembered by. "I see," commented Robin. "He was in league with the evil one," said one of the widow's sons, rubbing himself ruefully. Then Robin laughed outright, and set him down upon the gnarled root of a tree, to finish his merriment. "For bold outlaws, put to rout by a sorry beggar," cried he, "I can laugh at ye, my men, for I am in the same boat with ye. But it how old never do to have this tale to grow, even in the greenwood. How that we could not hold our own with the odds in our favor. So let us have this little laugh all to ourselves, and no one else need be the wiser. The others saw the point of this, and felt better directly, despite their itching desire to get hold of the beggar again. And none of the four ever told of the adventure. But the beggar must have boasted of it at the next tavern, or a little bird perched among the branches of a neighboring oak must have some of it, for it got abroad, as such tales will, and was put into a right droll ballad which, how weren't you, the four outlaws did not like to hear. Chapter 11. How Robin Hood fought Guy of Gisborne. I dwell by Dale Adown. Quoth he, and Robin would take I'm sworn, and when I'm called by my right name, I'm Guy of Good Gisborne. Some weeks passed after the rescue of the widow's 3 sons. Weeks spent by the sheriff in the vain effort to entrap Robin Hood and his men. For Robin's name and deeds had come to the king's ears in London town, and he sent word to the sheriff to capture the outlaw, under penalty of losing his office. So the sheriff tried every manner of means to surprise Robin Hood in the forest, but always without success, and he increased the price put upon Robin's head, in the hope that the best men of the kingdom could be induced to try their skill at a capture. Now there was a certain Guy of Gisborne, a hireling knight of the king's army, who heard of Robin, and of the price upon his head. Sir Guy was one of the best men at the bow and the sword in all the king's service, but his heart was black and treacherous. He obtained the king's leave forthwith to seek out the forester, and armed with the king's scroll, he came before the sheriff at Nottingham. I've come to capture Robin Hood, quoth he. I mean to have him, dead or alive. Right gladly would I aid you, answered the sheriff, even if the king's seal were not sufficient warrant. How many men need you? None, replied Sir Guy, for I am convinced that forces of men can never come at the bold robber. I must needs go alone, but do you hold your men in readiness at Barnstaple. And when you hear a blast from this silver bugle, come quickly, for I shall have the sly Robin within my clutches. Very good, said the sheriff. Marry, it shall be done. And he set about giving orders, while Guy of Gisborne sallied forth disguised. Now as luck would have it, with Scarlet and Little John, it bound to Barnstaple that very day to buy suits of Lincoln green for certain Vialman, who had come out at the knees and elbows. But not deeming it best for both of them to run their necks into a noose, together they parted just outside the town, and Will went within the gates, while John tarried and watched at the brow of the hill on the outside. Presently whom should he see but this same Will flying madly forth from the gates again, closely pursued by the sheriff and Fraser and men. Over the moat Will sprang, through the bushes and briars, across the swamp, over stocks and stones, up the woodland roads and long leaped like a scared jack-rabbit. And after him puffed the sheriff and his man, therefore scaring out in the flight as one man would tumble headfirst into a ditch, another mire up in the swamp, another trip over a rolling stone, and still others sit down on the rock for water. Little John could not forbear laughing heartily at the scene, though he knew there'd be anything but a laughing matter for should stumble, and in truth one man was like to come upon him. It was William Trent, the best runner among the sheriff's men. He had come with him 20 feet of scarlet, and was leaping upon him with long bounds like a greyhound. When John rose up, quickly drew his bow and it would have been better for William Trent to have been in bed with sorrow, says the ballad. Fun to be that day in Greenwood Slade to meet with Little John's arrow. He had run his last race. The others halted a moment in consternation when the shaft came hurtling down from the hill. And looking up, they beheld none save Little John, and with a cry of fierce joy they turned upon him. Meanwhile, Scarlet had reached the brow of the hill and sped down the other side. "I'll just send one more little message of regret to the sheriff," said Little John, "before I join Will." But this foolhardy deed was his undoing, for just as the arrow left the string, the good bow that had never before failed him snapped in twain. Woe worth thee, wicked wood, that art thou grew tree," cursed Little John, and planted his feet resolutely in the earth, resolved to sell the path dearly. For the soldiers were now so close upon him that he dared not turn, and a right good account of himself he gave that day, dealing with each man as he came up according to his merit. And so winded were the pursuers when they reached the top of the hill that he laid out the first 10 of them right and left with huge blows of his brawny fist. But if 5 men can do more than 3, a score can overcome 1. A body of archers stood off at a prudent distance and covered Little John with their arrows. "Now yield you," panted the sheriff. "Yield you, Little John around Greenleaf, or whatever else name you carry this day. Yield you, or some few of these shafts will reach your heart. Mary, my heart has been touched by your words ere now," said Little John. "Now yield me." So the sheriff's man laid hold of Little John and bound him fast with many cords. So fearful were they lest he should escape, and the sheriff laughed aloud in glee, and thought of how he should avenge his stolen plate, and determined to make a good day's work of it. "By the saints," he said, "you shall be drawn by the hill, and down, and high on a hill in Barnstill, this very day." Hang, retorted the prisoner. "You may fail of your purpose if it be heaven's will." Back down the hill and across the moor went the company speedily, for they feared a rescue, and as they went, stragglers joined them. Here a man got up feebly out of a ditch and loved his pate, and fell in like a chicken with the tip going for its dinner. Yonder came hobbling a man with a lame ankle, or another with his shins torn by the briars, or another with his jacket all muddy from the marsh. So in truth it was a tatterdemalion crew that leant and straggled and wandered back into Barnesdale that day. Yet all were merry, for the sheriff had promised them flathams of wine, and moreover they were to hang speedily the boldest outlaw in England, next to Robin Hood himself. The gallows was quickly put up and a new rope provided. "Now up with you. To my mood to sheriff. I would that I had bold Robin's horn," muttered poor John, methinks. "Is almond with me even as the sheriff has spoken. So at the time was dire and pressing. The rope was placed around the prisoner's neck, and the men prepared to haul away. "Are you ready?" called the sheriff. "Joe." But before the 3 left his lips, the faint sound of a silver bugle came floating over the hill. "By my troth, that is Sir Guy of Gisborne his horn," quoth the sheriff. "But it bade me not to deny answering its summons. He has caught Robin Hood." "Pardon, Excellency," said one of his men, "but if he has caught Robin Hood, this is a merry day indeed. Then let us save this fellow and build another gallows and hang them both together." "That's a brave thought," said the sheriff, slapping his knee. "Take the rascal down and bind him fast to the gallows tree against a return." So when John was made fast to the gallows tree, while the sheriff and all those men who could munch or hobble went out to get Robin Hood and bring him in for the double hanging. Let us leave talking of Little John and the sheriff, and see what has become of Robin Hood. In the first place, he and Little John had come near, having a quarrel that self-same morning, because both had seen a curious-looking yeoman, and each wanted to challenge him someway. But Robin would not be away to his lieutenant, and then that is why John, in a huff, had gone with Will to Barnesdale. Meanwhile, Robin approached the curious-looking stranger. He seemed to be a three-edged creature at first sight. But on coming nearer, you would have seen that he was really not, but a poorly clad man, who for a freak had covered up his rags with a maple hide, nothing more less than the sun-dried skin of the skin of the head made a helmet, while the tail gave the curious three-legged appearance. "Good morrow, good fellow," said Robin Eerie. "With thanks by the boy you bear in your hand that you should be a good archer." "Indifferent good," said the other, returning his greeting. "But not that I am thinking this morning, for I have lost my way and would fain find it again. By my faith, I could have believed Vigo was your woods who'd lost," thought Robin, smiling. Then aloud all you drew the wood. Quoth he, "And you will tell me your business, for belike your speech is much gentler than your attire." "Who are you to ask me my business?" asked the other roughly. "I am one of the king's rangers," replied Robin, "set here to guard his deer against curious-looking strollers." "Curious-looking I may be," returned the other, "but no stroller. Hark ye, since you are a ranger, I must demand your service. I am on the king's business and seek an outlaw. Men call him Robin Hood. Are you one of his men?" "I aim him keenly." "Nay, God forbid," said Robin. "But what want you with him?" "That is another tale. But I'd rather meet with that proud outlaw than 40 good pounds of the king's money." Robin now saw how the land lay. "Come with me, good yeoman," said he, "and belike, a little later in the day, I can show you Robin's haunts when he's at home. Meanwhile, let us have some pastime under the greenwood tree. Let us first try the mastery at shooting arrows." The other agreed, and they cut down 2 willow wands of a summer's growth that grew beneath a briar, and set them out but a distance of 3 or more yards. "Gone, good fellow," quoth Robin. "The first shot to you." "By my faith," said the other, "I will follow your lead." So Robin stepped forth and bent his bow carelessly, and sent his shaft whizzing toward the wand, missing it by a scant inch. The Uva horsehide followed with more care, yet was a good 3 fingers' breadth away. On the second round, the stranger lead off, and landed cleverly within the small garland at the top of the wand. But Robin shot far better, and clave the wand itself, clean and at the ring of them. "A blessing on your heart," shouted Nibelheim. "Never saw I such shooting as that. Belike you are better than Robin Hood himself. But you have not yet told me a name." "Faith, my faith," quoth Robin, "I must keep it secret till you have told me your own." "I do not disdain to tell it," said the other. "I dwell by dale and down, and I take bold Robin in my sworn. This would I tell him to his face, were he not so great a craven. When I am called by my right name, I am Guy of Gisborne." This he said with a great show of pride, and he strutted back and forth, forgetful that he had just been beaten at archery. Robin eyed him quietly. "Methinks I have heard of you elsewhere. Do you not bring men to the gallows for a living?" "But only outlaws such as Robin Hood." "But pray, what harm has Robin Hood done you?" "He is a highway robber," said Sir Guy, evading the question. "Has he ever taken from the rich that he did not give again to the poor? Does he not protect the women and children and side with the weak and helpless? Is not his greatest crime the shooting of a few king's deer?" "Have done with your sophistry," said Sir Guy impatiently. "I am more than ever of opinion that you are one of Robin's men yourself." "I have told you I am not," quoth Robin briefly. "But if I am to help you catch him, what is your plan?" "Did you see this silver bugle?" said the other. "The long blast upon it will summon the sheriff and all his men, when once I have Robin within my grasp. And if you show him to me, I'll give you the half of my 40 pounds reward." "I would not help hang a man for 10 times 40 pounds, said the outlaw. "Yet will I point out Robin to you for the reward. I find it my sword's point. I myself am Robin Hood of Sherwood and Barnesdale. Then have it you." cried the other, springing swiftly into action. His sword leapt forth from beneath the horse's hide with the speed born of long practice. And before Robin had come to guard, the other had met him full and foul, then eluded the lunge and drew his own weapon. His scurvy trick, quoth he grimly, to strike at a man unprepared. And neither spoke more, but fell Stanley to work. Lunge and thrust, and ward and parry. For 2 full hours the weapons smarted together sullenly, and neither Robin nor Sir Guy would yield an inch. I promise you that if you could have looked forth on the fight from behind the trunk of some friendly tree, you would have seen deadly sport such as few men beheld in Sherwood Forest. For the fighters glared sullenly at each other, the fires of hatred burning in their eyes. One was fighting for his life, the other for a reward and the king's favor. Still circled the bright blade swiftly in the air, now gleaming in the peaceful sunlight, again hissing like maddened serpents. Neither had yet touched the other, until Robin, in an unlucky moment, stumbled over the projecting root of a tree. And Sir Guy, instead of giving him the chance to recover himself, as any courteous knight would have done, struck quickly to fall in the middle. Oh, dear Lady in Heaven, gasped Robin, uttering his favorite prayer, shield me now. 'Twas never in a man's destiny to die before his day, and adroitly he sprang up again, and came straight at the other with an awkward but unexpected stroke. The knight had raised his weapon high to give a final blow when Robin reached beneath and across his guard. One swift lunge, and Sir Guy of Gisborne staggered backward with a deep groan. Robin's sword through his throat. Robin looked at the slain man regretfully. "You did bring it upon yourself," said he, "and traitor and heroine though you were, I would not willingly have killed you." He looked to his own wound. It was not serious, and he soon saw and had the blood and bound up the cut. Then he dragged the dead body into the bushes, and took off the horse's hide and put it upon himself. He placed his own cloak upon Sir Guy, and marked his face so men might tell her had been slain. Robin's own figure and face were not unlike the others, pulling an apple hat well over himself, so that the helmet and most of his face, Robin seized the silver bugle and blew a long blast. It was the blast that saved the life of Little John, over in Barnesdale, for you and I have already seen how it caused the fond sheriff to prick up his ears and stay the hanging, and go scurrying up over the hill and into the wood with his men in search of another victim. And 25 minutes up came running a score of the sheriff's best archers. "Did you sing to us, lording?" they asked, approaching Robin. "Aye," said he, going to meet the puffing sheriff. What news, Sir Guy?" said the officer. Robin Hood and Guy of Gisborne had a fight. "He that wears Robin's cloak lies under the covert yonder." "The best news I have heard in all my life," exclaimed the sheriff, rubbing his hands. "I would that we could have saved him for the changing. Thou, I cannot now complain." "The hanging," repeated Robin. "Yes, this is our lucky day on the calendar. After you left me, we narrowly missed running one of the fellows. I believe what Lilstrot, the Lurfworth, and another who came was relief. We were just about to hang when your arm blew." "Who was the other?" asked the disguised outlaw. "Whom do you suppose?" laughed the sheriff. "The best man in the greenwood, next to Robin Hood himself. Little John, brittled Greenleaf." For the sheriff could not forget the name Little John had borne under his own roof in Nottingham. Little John, thought Robin with a start. That was a lucky blast of the bugle. "I see you have not escaped without a scratch," continued the sheriff, becoming talkative through pure glee. "Here, one of you men, give Sir Guy of Gisborne your horse, while others of you bury that dog of an outlaw where he lies. And let's hasten back to Barnesdale and finish hanging the other." So they put spurs to their horses, and as they rode, Robin forced himself to talk merrily, while all the time he was planning the best way to succor little John. "A boon, Sheriff," he said as they reached the gates of the town. "What is it, worthy sir, you have but to speak?" "I do not want any of your gold, for I have had a brave fight. But now that I have slain the master, let me put an end to the man. So, it shall be said that I've sporned a spat law. I'd have it as you will," said the sheriff, "but you should have asked the knight's fee and double your reward, and it would have been yours. It isn't every man that can take Robin Hood." "Oh, Excellency," answered Robin, "I say it without boasting, that no man took Robin Hood yesterday, and none shall take him tomorrow." Then he approached Little John, who was still tied to the gallows tree. Yet he said to the sheriff's men, "I stand you back here till I see if the prisoner has been shrived." And he stooped swiftly and caught Little John's bonds and thrust into his hand Sir Guy's bow or arrows, which he had been careful to take. "'Tis I, Robin," he whispered. But in truth, Little John knew it already, and had decided there was to be no hanging that day. Then Robin blew 3 loud blasts upon his own horn, and drew forth his own bow. And before the astonished sheriff and his men could come to arms, the arrows were whistling in their midst in no uncertain fashion. And look, through the gates and over the walls came pouring another flight of arrows. The Scarlet and Will Stoopley had watched and planned a rescue ever since the sheriff and Robin rode back down the hill. The Owen good time make him name it, and the sheriff's demoralized force turned tail and ran, while Robin and Little John stood into the harmless gallows and sped swift arrows after them, and laughed to see them go. Then they joined their comrades and trusted back to the good greenwood, and arrested. They had got enough sport for one day. Chapter 12. How Maid Marian came back to Sherwood. First, also, Wood came before Queen Eleanor, but Robin in it, he himself a disgrace, and Marian was strangely added. And they proved foes, and so fell to blows as valor old Robin admired. And when he came at London's court, he fell down on his knee. "Thou art welcome, Lilloisley," said the queen, "and all thy good yeomanry." Now it fell out that one day not long thereafter, Robin was minded to try his skill at hunting, and not knowing whom he might meet in his rambles, he stained his face and put on a sorry-looking jacket and a long cloak before he sallied forth. As he walked, the peacefulness of the morning came upon him, and brought back to his memory the early days so long ago when he had roamed these same glades with Marian. How sweet they seemed to him now, and how far away. Marian, too, the dainty friend of his youth. Well, he ever see her again? He had thought of her very often of late, and each time with increasing desire to hear her clear voice and musical laugh, and see her eyes light up at his coming. Perhaps the happiness of Talonadale and his lady had caused Robin's heartstrings to vibrate more strongly, perhaps too, the coming of Will Scarlet. But Robin was anything but a hunter this bright morning as he walked along with head drooping in a most leisurely way. Presently a hart entered the glade in full view of him, grazing peacefully. An instant made the man of action awoke. His bow was drawn, and a shaft all burst when the beast fell suddenly, pierced by a clever arrow from a far side of the glade. Then a handsome little page sprang gleefully from the covert and ran toward the dying animal. This was plainly the archer, for he flourished his bow aloft, and likewise bore a sword at his side, though for all that he looked a mere lad. Robin approached the hart from the other side. "How dare you shoot the king's beast, stripling?" he asked severely. I have as much right to shoot them as the king himself, answered the page haughtily. How dare you question me? The voice stirred Robin strongly. It seemed to chime into his memories of the old days. He looked at the page sharply, and the other returned the glance straight and unafraid. Who are you, my lad? Robin said. No lad of yours, and my name's my own, retorted the other with spirit, softly. Fair and softly, sweet page, or we of the forest will have to teach you manners, said Robin. Not if you stand for the forest, cried the page, whipping out his sword. Come, draw and defend yourself. He swung his blade valiantly, and Robin saw nothing for it but to draw likewise. The page thereupon engaged him quite fiercely, and Robin found that he had many pretty little tricks at fencing. Nathless, Robin contented himself with parrying, and was loth to exert all his superior strength upon the lad. So the fight lasted for above a quarter of an hour, at the end of which time the page was almost spent in the hut. The lad flushed his cheeks in a most charming manner. The outlaw saw his distress, and to end the fight allowed himself to be pricked slightly on the wrist. Are you satisfied, fellow? asked the page, wincing a little at sight of the blood. I honestly, replied Robin. And now perhaps you will grant me the honor of knowing to whom I owe this scratch. I am Richard Partington, page to Her Majesty, Queen Eleanor, answered the lad with dignity. And again, the sound of his voice troubled Robin sorely. Why come you to the greenwood alone, Master Partington? The lad considered his answer while wiping his sword with a small lace kerchief. The action brought a dim, confused memory to Robin. The lad finally looked him again in the eye. Forester, whether or no you be a king's man, know that I seek one Robin Hood, an outlaw, to hurry and I bring amnesty from the queen. Can you tell me of him? And while awaiting his answer, he replaced the kerchief in his shirt. As he did so, the gleam of a golden trophy caught the outlaw's eye. Robin started forward with a joyful cry. Ah, I know you now. By the side of yon golden arrow won at the sheriff's tourney. You are she on whom I bestowed it, and none other than me, Marion. Dar, gasped Marion, for was she not Robin? Robin self, said he gaily, and forthwith, clad as he was in rags and stained of face, he clasped the dainty page close to his breast, and she forsooth yielded right willingly. But Robin, she exclaimed presently, I knew you not, and was rude I wounded you. That was nothing, he replied laughingly, so long as it brought me you. But she made more ado over the sore wrist than Robin had received for all his former hurts put together, and she bound it with a little kerchief and said, Now. And Robin was convinced she spoke the truth, for he never felt better in all his life. The whole wood seemed teemed with a roseate hue, since Marion had come again. But she, while happy also, was ill at ease, and Robin, with a man's slow discernment, at last saw that it was because of her boy's attire. He thought bluntly that there was naught to be ashamed of, yet smilingly handed her his tattered long cloak, which she blushingly put on, and forthwith recovered her spirits directly. And they began to talk of each other's varied fortunes, and of the many things which had parted them. And so much did they find to tell, that the sun had begun to decline well into the afternoon before they realized how the hours sped. I am but a sorry host, exclaimed Robin, springing to his feet. I have not once invited you to my wild roof. And I am but a sorry page, replied Marion, for I had clean forgot that I was Richard Partington, and did bring you a message from Queen in honor. Tell me on our way home, and they shall be entrusted to Mistress Dale, while the first of my men we meet will I send back for your dear. So she told him, as they walked back through the glade, how that the fame of his prowess had reached Queen Eleanor's ears, and the queen had said, Fain would I see this bold yeoman, and behold his skill with the longbow. And the queen had promised him amnesty if he and 4 of his archers would repair to London against the next tournament, the week following, there to shoot against King Henry's picked men, of whom the king was right vain. All this Marian told in detail, and added, "I heard her majesty say she desired to see you. I asked leave to go in search of you, saying I had known you once, and the queen was right glad, and bade me go, then sent this gold ring to you from off her finger, in token of her faith." Then Robin took the ring and bowed his head and kissed it loyally. "By this token will I go to London town," quoth he, "ere I part with the queen's pledge. May the hand that bears it be stricken off at her wrist." By this time they were come to the grove before the cave, and Robin presented Maid Marian to the band, who treated her with the greatest respect, while Scarlet was especially delighted to greet again his old-time friend, Aladale, and his good wife, but to make her welcome in their tiny thatch cottage. Then, after they had supped royally upon the very harp that Merlin had slain, Helen sang sweet songs of northern minstrelsy to the fair guest, as she sat by Robin's side, the golden hair gleaming in her dark hair. The others all joined in the chorus, from the Stroinlitz's baritone to Friar Tune, Coxavy bass. Even Little John essayed to sing, although that threatening me by much the miller's son. Then Robin bade Marian repeat her message from the queen, which Marian did in a way befitting the dignity of her royal mistress, after which the yeoman gave 3 cheers for the queen and 3 more for her page, and drank toasts to them both, rising to their feet. "Me have heard quoth Robin standing forth, how that her majesty, harm God preserve, wishes but 4 men to go with me. Wherefore, I choose Little John and Will Stuteley, my 2 lieutenants Will Scarlet, my cousin, and Aladale, my minstrel. Mistress Dale also can go with her husband and be company for the queen's page. We will depart with early morning, decked in our finest. So stir ye, my lads, and see that not only your tonies are fresh, but your swords bright and your bows and arrows fit. For we must be a credit to the queen as well as the good greenwood. You much with stout Will, Lester and John, the widow's 3 sons, shall have command of the band while we are away when your Friar Tuck shall preside over the needs of your souls and stomachs." The orders were received with shouts of approval, and toasts all around were drink again and nut brown ale, ere the company dispersed to rest after making ready for the journey. The next morning was as fine a summer's day as ever you want to see, and the green leaves of the forest made a pleasing background for the gay picture of the yeoman setting forth. Says the old ballad, "'Twas a seemly sight to see how Robin Hood himself had dressed, and all his yeomanry. He clothed his men in Lincoln green, and himself in scarlet red with hats of black and feathers, like a bravely deck each head. Nor were the 2 ladies bained, I ween, at the bedicking." Thus the chosen party of 7 sallied forth, being accompanied to the edge of the wood by the whole band, who gave them a merry parting and Godspeed. The journey to London town was made without incident. The party proceeded boldly along the King's Highroad, and no man met them who was disposed to say them nay. Besides, the good Queen's warning would have answered for them, as indeed it did at the gates of London. So when they sped in due course came to the palace itself, and awaited audience with the Queen. Now the King had gone that day to Finsbury Field, where the tourney was soon to be held, in order to look over the lists, and see some of his picked men whom he expected to win against all comers. So much had he boasted of these men, that the Queen had secretly resolved to win a wager of him. She had heard of the fame of Robin Hood and his yeoman, as Marian had said, and Marian on her part had been overjoyed to be able to add a word in their favor, and to set out in search of them. Today the Queen sat in her private audience room, chatting pleasantly with her ladies, when in came Mistress Marian Fitzwalter, attired again as befitted her rank of lady-in-waiting. She lowered aside low to the Queen and awaited permission to speak. "How now?" said the Queen, smiling. "Is this my Lady Marian or the page Richard Partington?" "Both, may it please your Majesty." "Richard found the man you sought, while Marian brought him to you. Where is he?" asked Queen Eleanor eagerly. "Awaiting her party and 4 of his men. Likewise a lady of whose wooing and wedding I can tell you a pretty story at another time. Have them admitted." So Marian gave hers to her herald, and presently Robin Hood, whose little party, entered the room. Now the Queen had half expected the men to be rude and uncouth in appearance, because of their wild life in the forest, but she was delightfully disappointed. Indeed, she started back in surprise and almost clapped her hands. For sooth to say, the yeomen made a brave sight. Being all the court no more gallant men could be found. Marian felt her cheeks glow with pride at sight of the half-dozen looks of admiration sent forth by the other ladies-in-waiting. Robin had not forgot the gentle arts taught by his mother, and he wore his fine red velvet tunic and green shoes, with the grace of a courtier. We have seen before what a dandified gentleman with scarlet was Mianado. The minstrel was scarcely less goodly to look upon, while the giant Little John and broad-shouldered will still be made up in stature, what little they lacked in outward polish. Mistress Dale, on her part, looked even more charming, if possible, than on the momentous day when she went to Plimpton Church to marry one man and found another. Thus came the people to Greenwood before Queen Eleanor in her own private audience room, and Robin advanced and knelt down before her, and said, "Dar, I am Robin Hood. I am a chosen man. At your Majesty's bidding I may come, bearing a ring of amnesty which I will enact. As I will protect your Majesty's honor with my life." "Thou art welcome, Lokaki," said the Queen, smiling graciously. "Thou art come in good time, thine olive brave young memory." Then Robin presented each of his men in turn, and each fell on his knee, and was greeted with most kindly words. And the Queen kissed fair Mistress Dale upon the cheek, and bade her remain in the palace with her ladies while she was in the city. And she made all the party be seated to rest themselves after their long journey. Fine wines were brought in cake, and rich food for their refreshment. And as they ate and drank, the Queen told them further of the tourney to be held at Finsbury Field, and of how she desired them to wear her colors and shoot for her. Meantime, she concluded, they would lie by quietly and be known of no man. To do all this, Robin and his men pledged themselves full heartily. Then at the Queen's request, they related to her and her ladies some of their merry adventures, where the listeners were vastly entertained and laughed heartily. Then Marian, who had heard of the wedding at Plimpton Church, told it so drolly that tears stood in the Queen's eyes from merriment. "My Lord Bishop of Hereford," she said, "'twas indeed a comical business for him. I shall keep that to twit his bones, I promise you. So this is our minstrel," she added presently, turning to Alan Adilil. "Methinks I have already heard of him. Will he not harp a while for us today?" Alan bowed low and took a harp which was brought to him, and he thrummed the strings and sang full sweetly the border songs of the North Country. And the Queen and all her ladies listened in rapt silence till all the songs were ended.